People often ask me, how's it been being president, and what are my, what am I proudest of, and what are my biggest disappointments? And I've got 2.5 years left. My biggest frustration so far is the fact that this society has not been willing to take some basic steps to keep guns out of the hands of people who can do just unbelievable damage.
Welcome back to Daily Wrap. That was President back in 2014 talking about the frustration he faced on gun control. Despite Mr. Obama's best efforts, there is a new shift in opinion on gun control and gun rights in America. This according to a new Pew Research poll. And it finds, for the first time ever, more Americans say protecting gun rights is more important than controlling gun ownership. With support of gun rights at a 25-year high at 52%, and support for gun control dropping to 46%. That's down 20 points since 1999. Evidence of the shift could be seen earlier this month when the NRA had its second biggest national convention ever, not to mention that the NRA membership has reached 5 million people. The poll also found an alarming disconnect between crime perception and reality, with 63% of Americans thinking crime was on the rise despite crime stats holding at a 20-year low. Will we see a shift in the Democratic Party, Rick, on gun rights based on this poll?
No, first of all, the Democratic Party per se does not have this strong anti-gun position. A lot of people who are part of the Democratic Party do.
Particularly Southern Democrats.
Yeah. I mean, look, my attitude's always been fairly simple about guns. Whether I like it or not, the Second Amendment does give the average American every right to have a gun. Doesn't matter what I think about that. So I think we have to start with that. One of the things we have to deal with in this whole debate, people who are anti-gun need to grow some respect for the cultural impact that guns have in certain parts of the country. You disrespect them when you refuse to understand that. It doesn't make them bad people. So this has got to be the beginning of the discussion. Only then, and by the way, there was another element of that poll that pointed out people do still want strong enforcement of the laws that are designed to keep guns out of the bad guys' hands.
Heather, I found New York Times very interesting today. Charles Blow, his headline has the NRA won.
Yeah, I don't think it's that simple. I mean, when you look at those numbers, you still got almost a 50-50 split. And as Rick said,
but it's going in one direction.
Right, but what's that a response to, I think, is the better question. We know it's not a response to true growth in crime. Is it a response to the militarization of police? Is it a response to the riots in Ferguson? Is it a response to fear from ISIS? I mean, we need to look at the root cause as opposed to, because as Rick said, you're allowed to have guns. If you are mentally sane and you pass certain requirements, you are allowed to have guns. And so we've got to figure out where's the fear coming from and make sure that the people who are getting guns, it should be in their hands.
If crime rates are dropping or at a 20-year low, then where is the impetus coming from for more people to buy guns, Brad?
I think we know more bad things faster than ever. And as human beings, we tend to metabolize bad news much more quickly than we do good news. There are reasons for that, and now isn't the time. I think these 2 points, though, trust and respect, are the key. And I actually think we do need more and better legislation, but here's what we know. 62% of Americans don't trust the government to enforce the laws we have fairly. So before anyone creates new laws, we better build trust with the American public on both sides of this. And Rick, you're 100% right. The key is, do people on either side actually have a measure of respect for their opponents? Until they develop that, we're going to stay in this cul-de-sac, we're going to be about equally split and never get a damn thing done.
Well, and that's why it's upsetting. Tim McGraw did a concert this weekend for Sandy Hook, and he got so much negative. I mean, one of the performers. Yeah, right. And so there's got to be some conversation. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but there's got to be conversation where he says, later on he said, listen, I still support the right to have a gun, but I also support these families.
You've touched a chord there, by the way, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. To drop out of a concert that is supporting Sandy Hook, which was one of the most vile acts of this century, if not the most vile. that somebody went in there and I'm getting emotional because I have an 18-month-old daughter,
Right.
and I can't believe that should be hands off,
Right.
regardless of what your stance is on guns. And somebody who dropped out.
It was one of the
Maybe
secondary.
B,
It was
yeah.
a performer. I can't remember.
Yeah.
either,
Really?
but, yeah.
We'll find out his name.
He
I'll
was
be
getting,
happy to share it after the break.
He was getting a lot of grief.
But it's difficult. I mean, there's a reason for that. Tim McGraw has been killed in social media
Right.
for having participated. So someone who has a lesser name and can't
What is
stand
the
that kind
argument
of-
against exactly?
Well, look, it's people who go over the top, and that's the problem with this. You have people on both sides of this argument who go way over the top. And one thing we have to remember about those numbers, you're comparing it to a year when people were hypersensitive to gun protection because of the terrible things that had happened at
Right.
Sandy Hook.
That's right.
So
That's
those numbers will shift, but people
Balance.
need to calm down on both sides.
That's right.
And have a reasonable discussion. I don't want to take anybody's guns away from them. We need to have a conversation about it.
And we just had a reasonable discussion. Anyway, coming up next, what was the name of the gentleman? Oh,
Billy
Billy
Currington.
Currington, dropping out of a Sandy Hook benefit. You are just a waste of space. Anyway, potluck time next.